In other words, it is both religiously and legally forbidden for a person to personally punish someone for a crime committed against themselves. There is no such thing. But it's as if tradition has given men this kind of authority. It wasn't enough that we put a woman's fate at the mercy of a man's words. We also gave our daughters, our sisters, and now their fate is left to the man's whims. So, what is missing in this whole process? Look, throughout this process, there is only one action, one behavior that should never be present, and that is violence. What we're talking about here is a culture, and predominantly, it's an Arab culture. In Turkish culture, the status of women has never been like this. That's an Arab culture. In Arab culture today, even the way women dress, where you can only see their eyes, that's their culture. Let them deal with their own culture themselves. But that was never the culture of these lands.
Istanbul. Hello, everyone from your school. Dear viewers, today we will be talking about women and authorized violence in the context of verse 34 of Surah An-Nisa. Our guest is Professor Dr. Şaban Ali Düzgün. Professor, today we want to talk about a concept mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, known in Arabic as darb, which is often interpreted as to hit or to strike in our language, and is something we've heard and are familiar with. This is an issue that is also a major topic of debate, especially for women. Are we understanding this concept correctly? Is it being interpreted accurately for us? How should we approach this issue? You suggested the title Authorized Violence for this topic. Is it correct to interpret the word darb here as giving men the authority to use violence against women? How should we view this? What do you think?
Thank you. So, the word darb, the word used as darb in Arabic, it can mean to hit, but it can also mean sexual intercourse. It can also mean to set out, to leave home, or to go on a journey. It's a word with nearly 20 different meanings, so when we take the word, we have to consider the context. That's important here. So, there is a dispute between a husband and wife. I'll touch on that in a moment. Ending this dispute, or resolving it positively, when I say ending, it could also mean ending it in a negative way. But that's not the case here, because in the background, there are signs that it ends positively. So, when we want to resolve things positively, when we bring the discussion to a negotiation and focus on the idea of striking or hitting, how are we supposed to achieve that positive outcome? Therefore, I wanted to draw attention today to the fact that the word darb is translated here as to hit, and to the person who would actually do this. I call it authorized violence. This is violence. In other words, it's like saying to the man, here, I'm giving you the initiative to solve this issue. Do something like this, and the problem will be solved. There is not a single sentence in your innocence. So what happens then? Violence is used. This is violence. And by invoking the name of God, you are transferring authority to the man to carry out this violence. You are authorizing him. So, by calling this authorized violence, I want to emphasize the seriousness of the matter and, well, the violence present here. This is called itkakai, taking the law into one's own hands. In other words, it is both religiously and legally forbidden for a person to personally punish someone for a crime committed against themselves. There is no such thing. But it's as if tradition has given this kind of authority to men. It was not enough to place the woman's destiny between her two lips. Because, for example, when a man says, you're divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced, it's as if the woman is actually divorced. What is this legacy that culture and tradition have handed down to us? We give away our daughter, our sister, we married her off. And her fate is left entirely up to the man's whim. So, when he gets really angry and says it 3 times in a row, we get caught up in the bureaucratic side of things, like, does that count as 1 divorce or 3 divorces? that something like this should never be possible. I mean, just like when getting married, in front of witnesses and
within the framework of consent.
Within the framework of consent and with someone officially, whether it's a marriage registrar, a mufti, a judge, like it was during the Ottoman period. But just as there must absolutely be a group of witnesses to the event and someone to officiate the marriage, if it comes to divorce, it should happen in the same way, following that procedure, in the presence of a judge, a witness, or whoever is authorized. That's how it should be done. Therefore, a man just uttering words of divorce about his wife while sitting at home does not actually result in a divorce. And it's also absurd for our jurisprudence to get caught up in bureaucratic details like whether this counts as 1 divorce or 3. Here's the issue. Giving all the initiative regarding the woman entirely to the man and authorizing him in this matter is problematic. Our interpretations always end up like that. First, that needs to be resolved. The perspective of the Quran on this issue starts all the way from creation itself. In other words, if there is a deficiency or a weakness in the nature of either the woman or the man, then you give authority to the other side. You say, you handle this so that no damage or problem arises. Like what? For example, if a child who hasn't reached the age of maturity or isn't of sound mind has a large fortune, you appoint a guardian so that nothing happens to that wealth. We understand this. This is correct. The child has a deficiency. They don't have experience yet. They don't know what's going on. They can't manage their property. So you appoint a guardian. So we need to say this. In order to authorize men over women and give all the initiative to men, you have to accept that, by their very nature or by their functions, men and women are different from each other. That one is superior and the other is lacking, so that you can ultimately justify such an authorization.
But teacher, don't the people who make this claim already accept this? I mean, they think that women are inferior and that men should dominate them.
If that's what they're saying, then it means they're not looking at the issue from a Quranic perspective. They can't. They don't evaluate it that way, or they simply don't want to. We all know about the treatises on the single soul, Nefsi Vahid. There are books about the single soul. There is such a cultural tradition. What is meant by single soul is this. God created both women and men from the same thing. He created them from the same thing. Think of it like this. There are 2 apricot trees. They're seeds of the same apricot seed. So both of these trees come from that same seed. They are counterparts to each other. Look, this debate is unnecessary. Women and men were created from the same thing. You know what that is. From the man's rib bone. There's no need to get into that debate at all. That's entirely a linguistic usage. If you ask whether the Prophet has such a hadith or not, yes, he does. Even if you accept it as authentic, it means this. A woman has her own character, abilities, and nature. Just like a rib. The structure of a rib is clear. It's not straight, not straight.
There's a curve to it.
That's its structure. This structure is its nature. If the rib bone were straight, it wouldn't be able to protect your chest cavity and internal organs. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. A woman is like a rib bone. She was created from it. It's said that if you try to make her straight, you'll break her. You have to respect her nature. That's it. Now, it's said that the source of this hadith is that she was created from a rib bone. It appears in the Torah as well about man and woman. And the word for rib bone used in the Torah is the same rib we know. So, it's entirely metaphorical. It's metaphorical there as well. It's exactly as we've interpreted it. The Torah doesn't say she was created from him either. So, it's also used as a metaphor there. Anyone with a bit of common sense would know that she wasn't literally created from there. Now, why is it like this? It's a bit harsh, a bit aggressive. As you can tell, we're talking about the issue in an agitated way. because you're giving one person authorized power to use violence against another person. What was the problem? In the Quran, disputes that can be resolved within the family are called neshus. If there is any behavior within the family that could lead to divorce, like infidelity by a spouse or severe incompatibility, for example, this is called shikak. These are the two terms used in the Quran, and in this verse, neshus is used. In other words, incompatibility within the family. So now there is incompatibility present. Of course, in families, arguments can happen for different reasons, and when these arguments become ongoing, they can lead to incompatibility. But this is not a reason for divorce. So, the Quran says to resolve this, because you shouldn't live with this problem, with this distress. So how do you resolve it? If we weren't aware of this verse, if such a verse didn't exist in our world, and there are families in the world who don't have this. If I were to ask you about such incompatibility, I mean, anywhere in the world, is it in this verse? A normal married couple who has no knowledge of the Holy Book. Incompatibility, for various reasons, let's say there aren't enough financial resources at home. The things promised to me when we got married, what the woman promised me or what the man promised the woman haven't happened, aren't happening. So I experienced disappointment, and we're talking about it. Incompatibility has started. These kinds of things are happening at home. So what do a husband and wife do now? How do they act when there are no resources here?
Don't ask me, Professor. I got divorced when I couldn't solve it. I mean, you try to solve it. Of course, if there's a problem, it's discussed between the spouses. You look for a way or method to solve it, to handle it.
But now, in the Quran, maybe hundreds and hundreds of different ways and methods have been tried here. It can certainly be tried, but the Quran wants the spouses to be a little distant from each other, to be a bit apart, to miss each other for a period of time, or to think independently and reflect deeply about what's going on and how to solve the issue, to really focus on the problem and work intensely to resolve it. So, in other words, there is a separation. When a problem arises while living together in the same house, let's separate and break down this problem, atomize it, and see exactly where the issue is coming from. Let people think about each part one by one. It says, if you couldn't come up with a solution through discussion, then you couldn't solve the problem. So, what it's saying is, for the first separation, start this process with advice. This is something mutual. In other words, the woman is over there, the man is here. You be quiet. I'm not going to preach to you or tell you anything now. In all of this, there is reciprocity, mutuality. We talk about it once. What is the source of the problem? Let's say the man comes home very late. He comes home at midnight night. He shows up, we talk about it. We say, this can't go on like this. Or maybe it's the woman who makes our family life difficult by also coming home late or leaving without letting anyone know. There could be countless reasons.
Yes.
So first, we talk about it. This is what it means to talk, to give advice. Give advice to the Fayhana. There is a problem, and we've separated. That's the first separation right there. We've become mentally separated from each other, and we've opened up that separation for discussion. As a result,
So basically, it's about putting the demands and complaints from both sides on the table.
we put everything on the table and talk it out, but we couldn't reach a conclusion through talking. It says to move on to the second stage. You separate into different bedrooms. You're still in the same house. First, we separated mentally. Then, physically, we separated the bedrooms and each of us is thinking and reflecting alone. Maybe they start to miss each other. I don't know. Or I say it differently, but the process continues. No solution was found. This time the Quran makes the separation even greater. Leave the house. Whoever has the means, whether it's the man or the woman, leave the house. That way, you'll have a stronger, healthier opportunity to think things through on your own. If you want to save this marriage, or if you don't, or if you're unsure, then we immediately turn to other verses for help. We inform the people who help us during the marriage process, those who accompany us, act as arbitrators, or serve as witnesses about the situation. We say, we want to save this marriage. There are other verses as well. Support us. Look, we got their support too, and in the end, we saw that everything was going well. If things aren't going well, then you move toward divorce. But to save the process, there's a procedure that starts with the individual, then with us, and then extends all the way to the witnesses. As long as this can be saved, what is missing here in this process? Look, in this whole process, there is only one action, one behavior that should never be present, and that is hitting. That is hitting. How did this violence happen? How did it get to this point? I really have a hard time understanding that. If someone could show me an example, like if someone were to say, in the Prophet's 23 years of life experience in the Sunnah, there was such an incident among the wives of the Prophet, teacher, and could find even a small record of it, because he also had arguments with his wives. There is the example of Hazrat Aisha leaving the house. When the accusation of adultery was made, there are verses in Surah An-Nisa about our mother Hafsa and our mother Aisha concerning those two. The Prophet himself gets upset and leaves the house. There are separations. Aisha leaving, the Prophet leaving the house. There are examples of this. There are examples of leaving the house, as I mentioned. But there isn't a single example of hitting. So, when we say let's support our argument, our claim, with some evidence or indication, we can find indications for separation, but we can't find any for hitting. Secondly, a different issue here is that, from a moral standpoint, it's not possible to authorize hitting, morally speaking. On what moral grounds would I base this? This isn't an administrative matter. That's not even our area in this context. What crime has been committed judicially that I would give a punishment for it? What is the crime? There is no crime present. There is no crime. Even if there were a crime, what we're saying is that neither religion nor the state allows for what we call vigilante justice, where a person gives out punishment for a crime themselves. In no criminal law is there any provision or reference that allows a person to punish a crime themselves. That itself would be considered a crime. So the thief who broke into your house was robbing my house. If you say, then I'll punish him myself, the state treats you as a criminal too. So, if there is a crime, only the state can address it. What you mentioned here.
To ensure a fair system.
So, within the family, the word darp, being, means separation, breaking apart. Because if you want to save the marriage, you have to separate them so they can think things over, reflect, and go to the arbitrators. Let common sense prevail, because inside the home, they've already forgiven each other. The discussion has gone beyond negotiation. It's turned into a struggle, and in the end, it will lead to fighting, even to killing each other. That's how serious it is. So we separated them and let them breathe easy.
So, did he take away all the belongings for travel?
With the concept of separation, traveling, and parting. Because we separated them in their minds, we separated rooms inside the house, then we separated houses.
A physical separation. So, Professor, how did this transform? Does the use of this concept, which should be about travel, have a cultural aspect, or is it a method of religious interpretation established by patriarchal dominance?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Not just in these areas. The Quran says this: those who kill the girl child will be asked for what crime they killed her. In our culture, the killing of girl children was exaggerated with a few examples, saying that this happened in Arab society. They described it in an exaggerated way, as if children were being buried alive, as if all Arabs were doing such a thing. But how does the killing of a girl child actually happen? It used to happen among the Arabs when a man had a daughter. It still happens today. He says, I want a son. When a girl is born, he makes a sour face. This is the killing of a girl child, and for that man, this shame alone is enough. Look, when it comes to rights and justice, you deprive the daughter of the inheritance you give to the son. What did you do? You killed her. You will be appointed to a higher position or status. Even though both man and woman went through the same educational, you choose the man. This is the glass ceiling syndrome. The woman, I keep hitting my head on something invisible. Is this just in Turkey? No, it's like this all over the world. So, unfortunately, culture still judges and evaluates women today with the mindset of male physical strength and male-dominated power from thousands of years ago, from hunter-gatherer and agricultural societies. That's our problem. I hope that, at this rate, we can achieve that equality, that justice. You know, the Prophet says, you are like two halves of an apple. If one half is missing, the other is incomplete. How did it come to this? Look, that's what we're saying. How did culture evolve to this point? Culture. What we're talking about is a culture. And predominantly, it's an Arab culture. Within Turkish culture, the status of women has never been like this. It's an Arab culture. And that Arab culture, even the way women dress today, where you can only see their eyes. That style of dress is a product of that culture. In Afghanistan, not even the eyes are visible. That's a culture. We have Pakistani women as well. They live in England and London. But when you hold a meeting, the meeting is divided in two by a curtain. On the left side, among a group of 50 women, not a single one has her face visible. This is experience. All right, now, let that culture go and let them solve their own cultural issues themselves. But the culture of these lands was not like that. So, no one should present culture as a religious norm or value and put it in front of us and say this. Look, the Quran wants women to be beaten. This is your cultural norm. And the purpose of the Quran is actually to take that norm and remove it from these lands.
Unfortunately, Professor, we see that men use this, justifying themselves with religion, to satisfy their own desires. On the other hand, we also see that women are turning away from religion just because of this perspective. There are plenty of examples of this around us. We see that this happens precisely because of situations that are perceived as examples of women being left in the background in religion or being dominated.
Absolutely. He says this. The Prophet says to his companions, take knowledge from Humaira. Humaira means the girl with rosy cheeks. Amr, like the Amr in Kizilay, Hilalai Amr, red crescent. It comes from the same root. He is referring to Hazrat Aisha. Hazrat Aisha is a teacher. She is the narrator of over 2,000 hadiths. She is our teacher who conveyed to us much of the Prophet's private life that was not open to everyone. She is a narrator, our mother. She is truly a teacher, all right? Now, in today's culture, there are some minds that object to female teachers giving lessons to men. Another example, someone else, is Bilqis. We know of his correspondence with Prophet Solomon in Yemen. In the Quran, Bilqis is described as a just, consultative, and virtuous female ruler who transformed her country into a prosperous nation. But in our jurisprudence, the question is asked whether a woman can be a ruler or a judge. Thankfully, according to the Hanafis, if a woman can be a witness, she can also be a judge or a ruler. They established such a ruling and swept this question off the table. So, this is somewhat dependent on the times, on development, and on the advancement of our human and humane standards.
Yes. I hope these insights will help us progress even further, Professor. I mean, we're in the month of Ramadan. There are men who, just because the soup is too salty, turn it into domestic violence, who have trouble controlling their anger.
They should fear God. They should fear God. Each and every one of them is an honorable individual in the eyes of God, and even if they have no one at all, the true protector is God. And if a man is going to raise his hand against his wife, he should think twice, knowing that if any violence is committed there, he will not leave the day of judgment without being held accountable for it. He will be held accountable.
Thank you much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, today we discuss the issue of authorized violence and women in the context of verse 34 of Surah An-Nisa. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.